Okay, I think you're good to go.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, we'll get us started. And you introduced and good evening. I'm Jim Ackley with Calvert Concept, also known as C4. We're one of the three sponsors for this workshop series. Calvert Library is sponsor and host site for us, and the Women's Commission of Calvert County. The other of the three sponsors will be hearing from them and introducing you, Malena, shortly. I did want to invite you to learn more about the Calvert Concept C4. It's a program that helps people break through roadblocks to the family financial wealth equity, if you will, through home or business ownership. And participants in the program have available to them up to about $5,000 a year. With the creative program, for about $6,000 in incentive payments, they can have earned $100,000 savings for business ownership. So if you know people who can benefit from that.
This meeting is being recorded.
We send them our way. And to tell them more about the program. Very much did if you listen tonight, giving us a different perspective, nature, relationship, and I will turn it over. Please do.
We're excited to partner with C4. This series is going to be like a three-part series. So today is us apart, and then we'll have one next month and one in June as well. But I'm super excited to introduce Malena Brookshire. I want to read hers because I don't want to miss a word. She is highly accomplished. So Malena is a finance executive and board advisor with more than 20 decades of executive level leadership spanning over 3 federal government agencies, state and local government, and nonprofit organizations. So you can imagine she has seen a lot. With a background in mathematics and economics and public finance, Malena's leadership is rooted in the belief that well-being is the foundation of professional excellence. I love that she is a registered yoga instructor like myself, which we bring in that mindset. So she's also a dedicated Pilates practitioner. If you've not tried Pilates, I highly recommend it. And if you ask, that's a lot. And then Malena also integrates mindfulness into her work and is committed to helping others, playing their voices will be changemakers. Without further ado, I'm going to turn this to you. That's all.
So I'm really glad to be here. I've been working with Adrian and understanding that this is the opportunity for us to come and share a perspective around how we relate to money, how we relate to finances. I got really excited about that. And so what a lot of people don't read about in my bio is my dedication to wellness, and it's so important to how I show up in everything that I do. And with that also is how I am very mindful about choices, right? And so that's what I'll talk a lot about today. How we relate our self-worth, our risk tolerance, and our values, and how that intersects with our money choices. So I just wanted to say at the top, this is, we're going to talk about, our financial decisions, and I'm not going to pretend that everyone is starting at the same place, right? We're all going to come to the conversation with different experiences, different responsibilities, different family situations, and different messages that we operate within and have heard around money and what we've absorbed over time. So tonight we'll reflect, we'll think about how to get clarity around some of those choices, as well as empowerment. So we're gonna talk about how our beliefs, our experiences, and our values shape the way we approach money, opportunity, risk, and how we lead in our lives as well. So I wanted to begin by grounding in why this conversation matters. So when people hear the word money, they often think, we can go to the next slide, they often think of numbers, budgets, bills, debt, investment, salaries, right? We think about those really hard sort of financial things, expenses. And yes, money does involve numbers. Money is not just about the math. It's also emotional. So it can bring up things like pride, security, guilt, fear, right? There are a lot of emotions that come along with money. Hope and possibility. It's relational. And it affects how we show up in our communities, in our families, in our business partnerships, our jobs. It can really affect a lot of that. So also in how we learn about money, what we heard about, what we've been inherited, the thoughts that we have around that. So it's also very strategic, and it can affect the choices we make and the opportunities that we feel prepared to pursue. So that's also really important. Money decisions will often intersect with identity, right? Again, our work, our community service, entrepreneurship, the work, the job, the volunteerism that we pursue. And so many of us are not just making decisions for ourselves, but we're often making decisions that impact and for our family and our broader. And so I want to talk a little bit about financial confidence and why that matters. And it doesn't mean that you have all of the answers. It does mean, though, that you're willing to look clearly at your choices, ask better questions, and understand your options so that we're making decisions that align with who we are and where we're going. So today we're going to look at financial confidence through three lenses: self-worth, risk, and values. So first, self-worth. We're going to talk about how our sense of value affects what we ask for, what we pursue, and what we believe we deserve. We're going to talk again, or after that, about risk tolerance. And so a lot of what I do professionally revolves around risk and how I evaluate risk. And so not just financial risk in this context, but career risk, the risk of being visible, reputational risk, right? There are a lot of risks that we take. So risk is a big part of it as well. And then lastly, I'll round it out with a discussion around value-based decision. So we talk a lot about how values can help us make clearer choices about money, about work, about opportunities. So the goal is not for everyone to leave here with all of the answers or even the same answers. It really is about asking better questions and having a clearer understanding of the patterns that operate. We go to the next slide. So we're going to take a moment here, which we reflect, and think about one message that you've learned about money growing up. So you might think back to your childhood. You might think about the community that you're surrounded by. You might think about your first job, even. But consider that a message you learned about money growing up. And so it might not have been spoken directly. It may have been something that you absorbed while watching others. So just think about that. Maybe you heard things like, money is hard to get. Don't take risks. Save everything. Maybe not to talk about money. You might have also heard, don't depend on others for money. Get a good job or keep it, right? There's no right answer. But just notice what comes up when you think about what you might have learned as you've grown up, and notice what comes up about that. And then when you think about what you might have learned growing up, or what you might have seen or heard directly, you can consider how that message shapes the way that you make financial decisions. There's usually a pretty strong relationship between the two. So it might have made you very cautious about the decisions that you make or the risks that you take or don't. It might have made you very ambitious, right? If you had a very hopeful or positive association with it, it might make you more ambitious about risks or opportunities. It might make you generous, considering what you learned or saw. So usually there's a connection, so that's something to really consider. And the reason why a reflection like that matters is because many of our money choices are shaped well before we've gotten our first paycheck, well before we've applied for or gone after a promotion, well before we start a business or make any major life decision. A lot of those thoughts that we've heard or thoughts that we have or things that we've learned affect us in that way. So that now brings us to this idea of a money mindset. And so we can go to the next slide. When I say money mindset, I'm talking about a set of beliefs that we have and assumptions that we carry about money, right? It shapes how we think about earning money, spending money, saving, maybe investing. It shapes how we give, how we receive. So some money mindsets are very empowering, right? For example, I'm allowed to ask questions, right? That's about money, about what to do with money. That's a very empowered way to look at it. Another one is money can be a tool for stability, freedom, generosity. And then there are money mindsets that might limit us. So one might be, I'm just not good with money, right? So we think about the things that we say and how we relate to that. I should be grateful for what I have and not ask for. That's a limiting mindset. Or it's too late for me. It's too late to save for retirement. It's too late to go after that opportunity. It's too late to start a business, right? So a money mindset can either be positive or it can be limiting. But what's important is that it's not fixed. We can always examine it. We can challenge it. And it can be updated. And so often the first step is simply noticing what comes up and how that impacts the decisions that we make. And so one of the most powerful places that money mindset shows up is in our self-worth, right? So, as many of us know, our value isn't determined by our income or the job we have, but often it's really a sense of what influences the financial choices that we believe we're allowed to make. So we can go to the next slide as well. So it can show up, your self-worth can show up in a lot of different ways. One way is how you might price any services that you offer or the salaries that you accept, right? Or negotiate, any pay that you negotiate. It might even show up when we decide whether or not to apply for that job or that next level role. Your self-worth might also show up in how we set boundaries, right? Especially with work that is unpaid, volunteer work, community work, or other professional contributions. Many of us are deeply competent, we're responsible, we're generous, but sometimes we've been conditioned to under-ask or underprice. So that's really important. And the key message is your sense of value is often, it often influences the financial choices you make. So the next step that you take or don't take is often influenced by that. So one thing to think about is where and how your own self-worth shows up in your financial decisions. That's just something to consider. We can go to the next slide. I really like this, right? Because it's a map. And as we think about some of those money mindsets that might not be as empowering or that might be limiting, this is a helpful tool to help us identify a belief that we have and how we can replace it. So any limiting belief and then how you can replace that limiting belief with a related or relatable empowered belief. And the goal is not to magically erase years of conditioning. in like 5 minutes. That's not the goal, and it likely won't happen. But it is to offer new language for any limiting belief that we have about money. So these are just a few examples. You know, an old belief is I should just be grateful for what I have. And that can show up in, well, I just don't ask for more. Right? And we can tell how that can be limiting, but an empowered way to think about that is gratitude and growth can coexist. They can exist at the same time. You can be grateful for what you have and also ask for more where it's needed or necessary. Another old belief is I'm not good with money. And that can show up and you just avoid looking, right? I don't want to look. I don't want to look at the bank account. I don't want to look at any investments. I don't want to know. But a more empowered way to think about that is I can learn one decision at a time. Right? So it doesn't all have to happen at once. Another one is taking risks is irresponsible. And I'm going to get up into risks a bit more later. And that can show up because, you know, you might just stay stuck. Right? Not making a decision is also a decision, right? So, but an empowered belief around that is strategic risk can create opportunity. So one last one, you know, I need permission. That might show up. You wait to be chosen instead of, you know, being prepared, asking, moving forward. And so anyway, I just thought that's just a really nice way to consider those limiting beliefs that we have and how do we just replace that language. So that could be something, you know, to think about. And I'll just give everyone a minute because this is a really important exercise. So just give everyone a minute to think about one of those limiting beliefs that you might have and how you might replace it. Like one that really shows up more or often. And mindset is just one part of financial confidence. The other major part is risk, as I mentioned before. So we can go to the next slide. Risk is another really key part. Our relationship to risk, how we think about risk, and then the actions that we take, again, or don't take. And risk tolerance, it's not just tied to, you know, choices we might make about a career or a job or investing. Risk tolerance is really about how comfortable we are with uncertainty. How comfortable we are about change and potential loss. So when you think about risk in that way, it really impacts so many choices that we make, and definitely choices that we make that are financial. And there are many kinds of risks. There's career risk, applying for a new role, returning to work after not being at work for a while, changing your career path, asking for a promotion. Those are all career risks. There are also financial risks, right? Starting a business, investing in yourself or in education for yourself, buying a home, leaving a stable job to go down a different career path, or making any major family decision around finances. There's also a reputational risk, and that's a big one, right? That's a little more about being visible, speaking up, putting your name out front, offering or volunteering to do something that you might not normally do. Time risk is really big as well. When we think about the ways that we spend our time, again, volunteering or doing other things in our community, and that's us committing energy to something that might or might not pay off in the way that we're expecting. Right? And then there's also emotional risk. And that can involve believing that you're worth something bigger, even before you might have the proof that that is true. Risk calculations can especially be complicated. We may be thinking about family expectations, community obligations, debt, health, stability. The goal is not to tell everyone to take a big leap and do something risky. But it really is, like, that would just be way too simplistic and not very easy. But it really is to understand the risk, prepare for it, and then decide whether or not the opportunity that you're weighing aligns with your values. And so that brings me to a really important idea. Sometimes we focus risk only on acting and we forget about the risk of not acting. And I know I said that before, right? Decision, to make a decision or to not make a decision. There's risk involved with both. And a lot of times, we often think, well, it's not risky if I don't do the thing, but it can likely be very risky to not do the thing, right? To consider and weigh the options of both. So let's go to the next slide, and that's when we think about sort of the cost of not acting, right? And the key message there, sometimes the greater risk is not moving, right? What if it doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I lose money? What if I'm not ready? Those are all valid questions. But there are a set of questions that also come with the risk of not doing, right? So what if I do nothing? What's the cost of not saying more? What's the opportunity that I might miss? What dream might I postpone by not doing the thing? So again, not always, but sometimes the risk can be greater as to not doing. So the purpose is not to force action, but really evaluate the action and inaction very honestly. So just really consider and weigh the different opportunities. Okay, we can go to the next slide. This is another a tool, right? When we think about a risk and readiness check. So it might be helpful just to think about one opportunity that you are now considering, or maybe you have considered in the past. It can be big, it can be small. It could be, if you think about anything, starting a side business, joining a board, a committee, volunteering for an opportunity, asking for a raise, taking a leadership role, whether in volunteer or in work, having a financial conversation with your family, whatever the thing is. And it's really helpful to ask yourselves a few questions. Right. So what is the opportunity? So name it, really name it as specifically as you can. And then think about what feels risky about the opportunity. What's the cost of not pursuing it? And sometimes that can be really challenging because that's a very sort of a what if. So if I don't, then what might happen? What support, information, or preparation could reduce the risk that you identify? So you think about what feels risky about it. Well, what can help it feel less risky? What support do you need? What questions should you ask? What information should you gather? And then one really important question is, does this opportunity align with my values? And that's a really easy question to say out loud because it does require that you've taken some time to think about what your values are. Because a lot of times that's the space that we're operating within, what we value. And then we think about opportunities, whether risky or otherwise, what does that mean? And how do I move forward? And a lot of times when something feels risky, we will stop just at the fear of the risk, right? That therein lies the inaction. But when we break it down, we might realize that what we need is not necessarily more courage or to feel fearless. Usually that's not what we need. What we need sometimes is just more information, more support, more planning, more practice at doing things that do feel uncomfortable, or more clarity. So that one question about there's an opportunity, you think about what feels risky about it. And then you ask yourself, well, what support, what information do I need? That's the part where you can maybe start to move from the fear or from being stuck to a place of moving forward. So a lot of times the fear isn't always a stop sign, but it's really just a signal that you might need more information or you might need more support. So sometimes it's helpful to think about it that way. And so again, that last question about does this opportunity align with my values, that is really, really important. Not every opportunity is the right opportunity, right? So values do help us decide. So we can go to the next slide. Choices tend to become much clearer when they are connected to our values. Our values help us understand what we decide to pursue, what we decline. They can help us decide what to save for, what to invest in, what boundaries to set, how we define success. Some values may even include the ideas around freedom and security and education and faith and family, right? So our values are really, they can be encompassing of a lot of different components of who we are and in our lives. For one person, a values-aligned money decision might mean taking a higher paying role. For another person, it might be leaving a role that pays well but drains their wellness or their well-being. So for one person, it might mean investing in their education, in a certification or a degree. And another person, it might be saying no to a volunteer opportunity that they just don't have time for it. So, the question really is, what choice aligns with our values, our responsibilities, whatever season in life we are, our vision for our lives and ourselves. So we'll go to the next. This slide is a simple framework. I do my best to make things tangible and real, right? Something you can sort of walk away with. And so this framework, as you can see, value, right? We're talking about values. And it can be something that you use when you're considering a financial decision or a career decision, a volunteer commitment, a business idea, really anything where there is an opportunity or a potential opportunity and how we think that through. So if we go down, right, the V is for vision. Does this choice move me toward the life or the role that I want or the future that I want? Sometimes we say yes to things because they are available and not because they're aligned. So the vision helps us ask that question. Is this taking me closer to where I want to go? The next is alignment. Does this opportunity reflect my values? A choice can look really good externally and still not be aligned internally. So alignment asks, does this fit who I am and what matters most for me in this season? Then we have leverage. So does this use my strengths, my relationships, my resources, my experience, right? How do I leverage what I already have or know or have access to? Any skills that you built over time or that you're currently learning, right? Those are real assets. So how does this opportunity leverage those assets? And then the U is for understanding. Do I have the information I need to make a sound decision? Or do I have the information I need, again, to move past the fear or to move past what I think might feel too risky to move forward in? So how do we move from that emotion of fear or not being able to move to more of an inquiry, like right where I'm asking the question, I'm getting the information. Do I understand the numbers involved here? What are the expectations? What are the trade-offs? What's the timeline? And then lastly, we have energy. Will this choice support or drain the life that I'm looking to build? And this is important. Because not every good opportunity, right? It might still be a good opportunity, but it might not be the right time. So that's really important. Energy reminds us to consider things like, is it sustainable? Do I have the capacity to take this on? Is this good for my well-being? So when we think about that, faced with a decision, especially those money decisions, does it support my vision? Is it aligned with my values? Does it leverage what I already have? Do I understand the decision clearly? Do I understand this money choice clearly? If not, how do I get more information? Where do I get more information? Does it support the life that I'm trying to build? So that's values-based decision making, right? It's considering all or most of those things. And at certain times, one or some of them might be more important than others for certain decisions. So as we close, I want us to consider, one belief that we're ready to release. So when we think about those limiting beliefs that we might have either learned or picked up on, along the way, or that we just currently have when we're faced with a current decision. Think about one of those limiting beliefs that you might be ready to just let go of, right? Again, like it's too late. I just don't have enough time to save for retirement. I just don't have enough time to take that trip, right? I just don't know if I budgeted correctly. Whatever it is, I'm not good with money. I shouldn't ask for more. I don't know how to ask for more. And then think about one empowered belief that you are choosing. So some of the ones that we talked about, right? Growth and gratitude. Yes, I can ask. I should. I can prepare. I can get more information so I can move forward. My experience has value. Okay, so we can think about that. And any action that we take, it doesn't have to be dramatic, right? It just has to be intentional, right? So that's what a lot of this is about. When we think about the mindset we have around finances and money and choices more broadly, it's about being intentional where we can be when we're faced with choices or opportunities. And then we can go to the last slide. You don't have to have everything figured out. I think I was saying that earlier on. When we talk about financial confidence, it is built one decision at a time. For some people, the more opportunities and risks you take, the easier it gets to take those risks and move forward with opportunities. But when your choices are rooted in self-worth and when your choices are rooted in values and informed risk, it really helps to move forward with making decisions about opportunity, again, money or otherwise. So I hope that overall you leave here with more clarity, a little more confidence, maybe a few tools to use when you're facing with decisions, particularly decisions around finances or money. And I really want to thank everyone for showing up. I know the topic was sort of a bit of a twist on what we might normally talk about in these series, but hopefully you all were able to walk away with something. Thank you very much.
Can we do questions?
I am, yes, happy to take questions.
Oh, how do we use C4? Are you a part of C4?
Oh, we have partnered with C4 tonight. Yes, I didn't know. To say anything.
Let me address that.
Could you restate the question for the people on Zoom?
Sure. The question was, how do we use C4 or get involved with C4?
As far as getting involved with C4, is that some information there? And you can talk to me tonight. As far as how C4 fits into this I'll just talk about it, I don't wanna, all the people focus on you. C4 provides opportunities. It works with expert mentors. It facilitates people being able to take the next steps, to prepare for the next steps, to prepare for decisions, and links you with someone who acts as a mentor, not to give you answers, but to help you find answers and resources. So C4 is a facilitator to help people do this kind of thinking and action. Glad to talk with you more about it.
I was thinking of my granddaughter who's 21 and I don't know if she knows
Might be perfect.
how to save and
That's a big part of
how to
C4,
spend.
saving, budgeting, learning what you need to learn to take the next steps, setting goals and keeping momentum going towards the goals. And there are a lot of folks who just haven't had the background to assist them with doing that or paid attention when the opportunities were there. And now they're going, okay, now I need to pay attention. I need to make decisions to move forward. And that's what we can help with.
And especially at that age, right? Because you definitely don't have it all figured out, right? And so it can be when you're looking at, creating a budget, especially at that age, which is really important. You might have your first job and you're trying to figure out how do you save, how do you buy the things that you want. It is helpful to think about, well, what do you want your life to look like right now? What does that look like? Are you trying to buy a car? Do you already have a car? Are you trying to go to school at the same time, right? So answering some of those questions along the way can also help. So, as you mentioned, it's a core part of what IMC4 helps to prepare for and arm you with, so that, especially like you said, at that younger age, to make those decisions, and they change. Your values change over time.
So what is your where do you come from? Like your business, or how are you connected? Because I missed the introduction part.
Oh, thank you. No problem. No problem. So I have a background in public finance, in fact. So professionally, I deal with money for big organizations. But a lot of what I talk about is values-based decision-making and leadership and how that impacts decisions. So a lot of what I do for my career, and then personally, I bring all of that in. So I was invited to join the series along with a colleague. We're doing a 3-part series, in fact. So really about how the mindset portion of budgeting and money and how that impacts things.
I was raised with no concept, no knowledge. Joined the Army at 18 and was on my own and learned it on my own, and most of the time felt I didn't have enough money. Living paycheck to paycheck, but that's my background. So I don't know a lot about it. And one of my questions is, can I leave it all up to my financial advisor? Because I don't know how to read my IRA and understand it.
I wouldn't recommend leaving it all up to the financial advisor. And I do think, again, not to keep pointing back to C4, but I think that's a lot of what C4 helps, is to provide that education and understanding about some of the basics. So that when you are talking with a financial advisor, you're able to ask the right questions, because that is, for sure. And coming to a financial advisor, again, with what you are in goals that you have, will be helpful, because they can only advise you on a path based on where you're trying to go. What the current situation is, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve. So, but that's all.
Don't leave it all up there.
No.
I mean, I trust him. I've had him for years. Yeah, but I don't know, like, I know basic questions. I don't know, like, more than that. Okay, Thank
I
you.
guess it would be similar to like any professional that you hire, like even your doctor, for instance. Your doctor might give you medical advice, but you still can make those decisions on your own as to what you are comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with.
And he gives me the options.
And we do have a series. This series is in partnership with the Women's Commission as well. So we talk about literally, I don't want to say everything, but many things. So we've talked about estate planning before. We've talked about financing college before as to college application, budgeting. So and if you have any suggestions, I would love to talk to you about things that you would like to talk about. And we've been doing this for a while now. A year and 2 years?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, no, go us. But they are recorded as well.
Thank you.
I appreciated your value acronym.
Yeah.
That's helpful. But you also use value with lowercase, the values. I wonder if you talk about the consequences, the potential risk of doing things, making decisions that aren't consistent with your personal value. By way of example, I think we all have, I certainly have been provided opportunities for enrichment or better financial circumstances that were not consistent with things I consider fundamentally right and wrong. Now, I wonder if you'd address that. It's kind of easy to say, but are there consequences for not aligning with your personal fundamental values?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. And there are some real consequences, right? So I want to talk about those first, right? You might get talked into what seems like an interesting opportunity, and it's just a money scheme, right? So there are some real consequences where you could literally lose money or lose your footing on any progress that you make. And so that's where really getting information. As you mentioned, do I trust the people that are helping me make decisions about money? And you might, but also with that trust is asking the right questions and asking questions, right? Oh, I'm really not sure about this. Can you explain more? So sometimes there are some of those real consequences. And then there are some of those consequences that are just a little more like that doesn't feel like it aligns with what I know to be true or feel to be right, or not aligned with, again, where I'm trying to go. And sometimes, we make mistakes, right? So on the one hand, and we might even think about that with debt, right? Some of us might have gotten ourselves, in some real situations with too much credit card debt, or, pick a thing, right? And it doesn't mean it's all over, it's all said and done, but it is important to really learn from that. Like, right, where, and in that situation, where did I make a choice where it really wasn't aligned, or as you mentioned, it seemed okay at the time, and then later you realize, oh, that didn't fit so well, or now I'm in a real financial situation that's really tough. So yeah, when it comes to that, we think about what that looks like and what's the path. As we're clearer about our values, it's a little hard to feel off when we don't have a marker. So that's why it's really important to try to identify those. We don't have to have everything figured out all at once, but try to identify what your markers are. Because without that, you don't know if you're to the left of it or to the right. And it is a little easier to sort of get swept away or get involved in an opportunity that might seem like something that's really good, but it might not be. So, it's okay to turn around. I think at one point I was talking about things can change and shift, and it's not fixed. Certain things just aren't fixed. But it's important to sort of recognize that as you're going along and course correct as soon as possible if you find yourself going off the wrong.
Might be helpful to a few people in the room.
I've been with the C4 program for 2 years, and I will be with, hopefully within 1 more year. You can stay in it for 3 years. But one of the things that they told me to do was to savor. And because I've been consistent with it, I have over $3,000 in it. But I wish I had learned this when I went back. The granddaughter, 21 or something.
Me
Oh,
too.
well, I would be set, but so it's kind of nice to have somebody who says, it's okay to say, let me check and see, are you really doing it? You know, I don't have to do it because they're going to check to see if I'm really doing it. But this program is really good too, because the decisions you make, you know, would make you go forward, backwards, sideways, on. But I'm glad to be in the C4 program because I was not sick. I was spending what I was.
I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, and it sounds like you really realize like the value in that, right? And it's rewarding.
Yeah, and what made me stay was I had to treat my status like it was a bill. I paid my car note, I paid my insurance, I had to pay that money. I had to treat it like a bill. So every month I knew I was gonna pay my bills every month. And now I can see it build up.
So the people pay yourself first, right? That's some people always say, yeah.
Mandatory.
And you need to start early. I had no concept. I had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, one of the best best tools that we have when it comes to finances really is time. But and though it's never too late. Whenever you start that clock is good. The sooner the better, but it's never too late.
Yeah, so it's a very good presentation. Thank you very much. Is there any way to get copies of these to like share with clients that can't be here, that couldn't be here?
Yes, we are open to that. We work with C4 to make sure.
This is also being recorded, so if anyone would like to watch it afterwards, we send out the recordings and the slides via email. You're welcome.
Well, thanks everyone for being here. I'll be around for a little while if you wanted to have any questions of me personally, but thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.